Good evening, everybody. Evening for me, and it'll be morning for you guys when this gets released. Welcome to Run It Back, number 31. So start the same way every week. So I'll start the same way every week. I'm your host, Menelik Fernandez. Thank you for joining us. The premise of Run It Back is we take teams that have played previously and we run it back, so to speak. And we talk about what worked in the game, what didn't work, how we prepared, what our scouting process looks like, and any changes that we might make going forward if we were to theoretically play that game again. Today, we're taking a look at a November 15th, 2019 game of Great Lakes Christian College versus Olivet. I'm not going to say that properly. I'm sorry. Apologies to the school. Um, so we'll start with two things. First of all, we're very lucky to have the assistant coach from Great Lakes Christian College join us, Connor Harr. Connor has since moved on and is now with the West Liberty Hilltoppers, which is a D2 school. And Connor, I'll try to do you some justice with this introduction here. I don't think I can, given where you are already. Connor, like I mentioned, was a student assistant coach at Great Lakes Christian College. He spent 2 years at Columbus, Ohio State Community College as a student manager. He's also been a NCAA and NBA credentialed, let's do this again. Wrote for 270 as an NCAA certified scouting service writer, and then has also been a credentialed NBA draft writer consultant for several basketball websites. And in my humble opinion, is soon to become one of the best clinicians out there, has been giving some excellent talks this year. Obviously has an incredible Medium and newsletter that have been going out, and I tune in every week. He does all kinds of stuff that is excellent in that. I'll put a link to it down below in the description if you're watching later on. So Connor, I'm super happy to have you join us. Thank you for doing this. First day of the new year. Happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year, man. That was a very warm introduction. I don't think I deserve a whole lot of it, but I appreciate it. And I'm just happy to be sitting here talking with a good friend about some basketball.
I love it, and I appreciate. For those of you who don't know, Connor was actually a pretty early adopter of Run It Back. He was, if I'm not mistaken, on one of the very first ones, and has managed to get in. And then the other point that I wanted to mention, of course, is that for those of you who are really tuned in to Run It Back, first of all, I appreciate you guys, but you'll recognize the school as we had Connor's former head coach on here, Richard Westerlin, in one of the previous episodes. So Connor will be giving us his perspective as an assistant coach from the Great Lakes Christian School. And let's go back. I mean, this is a little ways ago, but let's hear a different perspective about a team that presses a lot. We'll start there. And also, just what was it like? I mean, we're going back a little bit in time. You were on a 2-day turnaround from a loss to a school called Northwood. When do you start this scout? What's your process look like? How does it differ from what maybe Rich would be doing for his scouts versus what you're doing for your scouts? Give me the framework of everything that you can remember from this.
So this scout was actually really unique. Olivet came in with a new coach and almost an entire new roster. And if you look on their schedule, it says they didn't play a game before us, so we were their first game of the season. They actually opened up with an exhibition the day before we played Northwood against Davenport, another D2 school in Michigan.
Great.
And I actually went to that game live and had my little legal pad and pen and was trying to remember the sets right off the bat as soon as they ran them and writing down different tendencies and stuff. So I went pretty old school on that, and that was a really unique experience for me. But after that, sometimes you can be a little iffy. Every once in a while with the smaller schools, there might be a synergy game missing here or there. Right. So in the off chance that happened, I didn't want to do that. So we went to go watch it live. And after that, I went back on Synergy and, went through all their clips from the game and, one game with almost a new roster and a new coach. So you can't really go back on anything from the previous season. If I'm not mistaken, Great Lakes didn't play them last year either.
Okay.
So it was really just almost like a blind scout pretty much. You had one game to work with.
And so as the season went along, I'm sure you got into a different process of getting scouts done for different teams. What would you typically watch in terms of amount of basketball? What would you typically put in terms of basketball in the scouts that you were preparing that were there? And then because this was early in the season, what are some of the real differences and in hindsight now that you were noticing, yeah, well, didn't do that comparatively because we didn't have the games, or didn't do that because we didn't know the personnel, et cetera. What would be some of the differences that would jump off the page to you?
So I would say the biggest difference is, this because I made a video edit just for this call. Like, I'm crazy into preparing. Like, that's my thing. Like, if you look on my Twitter bio, it says preparation eliminates fear. And that's something that I firmly live by in my life. So I'm a nut when it comes to scouts. Like, I'll watch as many games as I possibly can and as much time as I possibly can. The way I sort of try to dive into it first is I'll go on Synergy and I'll break everything down from play type and player.
Okay.
So I'll look at their offensively, I'll look at like their 5 most common play types on Synergy, whether that's like pick and roll handler, spot up, whatever. I'll look at those and I'll watch probably about 25 to 50 possessions of that as like a little starter for each of those. And then I'll do the same thing with the players. And the goal out of that is like, all right, so this team might run a lot of stuff, they might not run a lot of stuff, but what's the stuff that they actually score on? And what are the players doing to actually score off of it?
So
Um,
when you're doing that, are you watching all clips? Are you watching only makes? Are you watching only misses? And like, are you looking at the numbers as well to sort of, like, for me, I do something sort of similar, but I'll look at the numbers and I'll let the numbers kind of shape my opinion of what I'm watching as well. Do you try to go blank slate and let the video tell you what's going on, or like how does that incorporate for you?
if it's later in the season, I'll go more of like a blanks or yeah, like a blank slate, I'd say. Um, Earlier in the season, I'll kind of go. Actually, I'm sorry, I got that reversed. So earlier in the season, I'll go blank slate. Later in the season, when there's much more to go off of, I'll go more like numbers. So
Right,
I'll watch like more makes and stuff because I mean, as much as I love to prepare, I was also a full time student at Great Lakes.
right.
So it would be impossible for me if we're 25 games in the season to watch a team's, all their offensive possessions. So, later in the season, I focused on makes, but earlier in the season, it's mostly just everything as a whole. If there is something that sneaks up in there, like let's say like you're probably like 10 games in and they run like one off screen possession a game, but they have like a really high points per possession on it. I always make it a point to hit that because normally to me that usually sticks out as like that's like an ATO or like a blob.
Love it. So specifically where you were, and I know the answer a little bit because I've met Rich and I've interacted with Rich and obviously I've talked to you, but like specifically where you were, as you mentioned, you were a student slash coach. And in doing so, your time is constrained. How did Rich allow you to present stuff to guys? Like, first of all, are you presenting to him first and then to the guys in a secondary meeting? Are you delivering film? Are you giving them a paper copy of stuff? Like, how are you compiling all of this stuff that you're putting together and giving it to them? And who gets what? Does each individual get certain things or does the whole group get stuff?
So for my scouts, Rich, and I'll say it till the day I die, Rich is awesome. And Rich is a big part of where I'm at right now.
He is, without a
He
doubt. Big shout out to Rich.
Yeah, he gave me a lot of freedom when I didn't really deserve it, and being able to learn on the fly like I did was, I feel like, what has really improved my development
Right.
as a coach. So when going through these scouts, this was actually the first scout that I did all by myself for Great Lakes, um,
Nice.
and we went on and we did for bigger games, like games that he really wanted to do. Like the Grinnell game was all his. He
Right.
played Grinnell probably like 4 or 5 times. He was sick and tired of playing, the system against them. And he's like, I can beat it, I can beat it, I can beat it. Or like games like Grace, which is the one he did on Run It Back with You, who's our
Right.
rival and one of our biggest competitor in the division. We would tag team those kinds of things.
Right.
But I did a lot of the scouts on my own as well. Obviously, I would send him a copy over, and he would look it over, and any tweaks that he felt the need to make, he would. But most of the time, he gave me a lot of freedom. And a general scout for us, we start out with our matchups. We have three offensive keys for us. We have three offensive keys, three defensive keys. I'm sorry, three defensive keys for the opposing team,
Right.
and then our three offensive goals. And then we have the flip side. We have our defensive keys, their offensive keys, and our three defensive goals. And
Nice.
then we had personnel, which we would go with the guys that would play in the rotation. In this case, going on one game, it being a blowout, it was hard to decipher rotation. So we had to go deeper into personnel than we probably wanted to. And it would just be, two or three quick points and their stats.
Interesting. So, I mean, you're talking about, sounds like if my math is correct, 3 by 3 times 2 is 18. So there's 18 like focal points that go into your scout there. And then in addition to that, there's a couple points for each of the personnel. How are you delivering that to your guys? Are they getting a paper copy? Are they watching film with you? What's going on there after you give it to your head coach?
Yeah, so we do we did film for some games. For this game, we did not do film. Um, we did paper copies for them. We also give them electronic copies.
Right.
So we would send them, through text. So like when we're on the bus, we're driving to the game. This was actually a road trip out of state, so we had a lot of time on the bus because we played at a neutral site for this game. Uh, they had time, and we would be like, okay, now it's time to go over our scout, and we'll go from there. And we present it the day of the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about probably in our pre-practice, our shoot around, and then our practice before the game. We go over some stuff as well, like certain sets that we saw, or like out of bounds plays, all that stuff. I'd say in total, like on the court in practice, we spend about 20 to 30 minutes over those 2 days preparing for what the other team we think is going to do. But on the flip side, if we are like a pressure team, we do understand that we take teams out of a lot of what they want to do. And by playing at our pace and pressuring them, we feel like we don't have to necessarily prepare on like the sets and stuff as much as we do as like the blobs and stuff.
Awesome. So Chris's question ties in. Chris just dumped it in here. Chris Bogert's an assistant coach with Western's women's team up here in Canada. He says, "What's your time frame between games?" So we mentioned on this particular one was 3 days, I believe. So what is it typically? And then how does the second scout differ when you're playing 2 or 3 games in a short amount of time?
So time frame is like our time frame in between games normally.
Yeah, I would assume so. Because we're always in Canada, we're always Friday, Saturday. We've got a couple coaches, like I know Roy Rana, who's now moved on to the Sacramento Kings, was avid about trying to get us to play Wednesday, Saturday up here in Canada.
Uh-huh.
But for as long as I can remember, we've been Friday, Saturday, which makes like run it back would be really interesting to discuss Saturday scouts in Canada because everybody's doing something different and you definitely don't get the same input on the Saturday as you do on the Friday.
Okay, so we played like 2 games a week most of the time. It would be like a Tuesday, Saturday, or like a Wednesday, Saturday. In this case, we actually were like in part of like a tournament. So we
Right.
played 3 games that week. We played Northwood on Wednesday, we played Olivet on Friday, and then we jumped right back into Defiance on Saturday.
Wow.
That was the only time that we were really like that. Defiance was a little bit easier, just because they had a lot more film and they were just basically just a ball screen continuity team. So it was a lot easier to scout. But I would say in general, like in terms of like this situation, like we didn't really change anything on the floor. Like we still went over their continuity and what they did. And by doing that, I feel like we kind of gave them a little bit more time to rest too, because we're not, focused in on anything else.
For sure. So then my question goes from the general scouting process to the specific process for you. what, if any, of the things can you share? Did you identify? Uh, were those keys that you were talking about for this specific team? Like which players did you think you needed to really look out for? What sets did you think were more important? How did you think you were going to approach it? And what, if any, of the things do you change?
Right. So we felt like overall, like on paper, that we were the more talented team, which is not usually the case when you have an NCCA school versus a D3.
Okay.
And we we felt like watching them in their game, like we knew that they wanted to play a little bit faster, which isn't necessarily typical from a D3, but is not like uncommon by any means.
Right.
Um, but we said, okay, they want to play our game. Like, and we loved when we had teams like that where we felt like, we could play our game better than that. And as far as like people that we looked out for, so they had a guard. His name was Sean Pardee.
Mm-hmm.
He was a stud. And we actually did a good job really containing him. They had a kid named Chris Young, who was like a 6'5", 6'4", but he was like downhill driver, playing the forward that would dominate the ball a lot when he came in off the bench. He really hurt us. And one of our biggest adjustments that we needed to make on that we made too late, was with a downhill driver like that didn't really have much of a threat to shoot. We wanted to get up in him early,
Right.
instead of giving him more space to get downhill, because he was built kid. Like, I think he was like a 25-year-old junior or something.
Okay.
So like he's a grown man. So by giving him all that time to build up steam downhill, you're just making it harder to guard and harder to defend. And I felt like that really hurt us. As far as stuff we wanted to attack offensively, we wanted to play our game. And from talking to Rich, like he's very true to what he does. And that's something that's like, it's kind of non-negotiable.
Right.
But we wanted to play in transition like we always do. We wanted to attack them in space. And then in their ball screen coverage, we wanted to find ways to attack their deep drop, because their big would be dropped extremely deep. And we wanted to find ways to take advantage of that with like our versatile lineups and our ball screen situations to be able to get downhill and turn the corner or pop out for a three. Different scenarios like that we felt like were really favorable to us. And then defensively, we wanted to limit those two guys. Those were their two studs. We knew it. And we did a good job on one. We didn't do a good job on the other. And then we wanted, obviously, like we always do, we want to force turnovers. We want to force as many turnovers as possible.
For
And
sure. Did a great job. 21 in this game, right?
yeah. And I actually wasn't going back on this game. I wasn't happy with how we pressed at all. I felt like we had a lot better days. And
Well, I got some questions for you when we get to the video, so for sure you can let me know.
Yeah, definitely. So like realistically, like I think that we probably should be like, I can't remember how many turnovers we averaged this year, but I think we were probably close to like the 25 range.
Okay.
And so that was a little bit lower for us. And then more importantly, we wanted to capitalize on our turnovers. And that was something that we always talked about really big, is like, we want positive. That's something that Rich was always really big on, is it's positive. It's not positive negative, or it's not
Right.
negative. If you go negative, you give up a run. You go positive negative, doesn't really matter. It kind of negates. And then if you go positive, that's when you start to build up your runs, as many positives that you can put together in a row.
So I got a question that's a little bit outside of the scope. And it kind of comes to me. So with a coach, with a staff that stays true to what they do. I mean, Rich, you guys, you pressed a lot, pretty much exclusively.
40 minutes.
In doing so, do you guys spend less time than a traditional scout on like their half court sets and try to dictate what you're going to do in the half court defensively? And when you mention particular players that you want to match up with, like for instance, in this game, what I saw was a lot of 2-2-1 back into man. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Oh, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So when you go 2-2-1 back into man, are you having specific players trying to find those specific guys type deal, or is it closest man and everybody has to be aware of them. Like, how does that work in a defensive system where somebody is trying to stay very true to what they do and is consistently pressing, that kind of thing? Like, what are the finer teaching points that you've learned while being there?
No, definitely. That's a great question. And so for us, we went over two of their sets, half court sets.
Right,
And one was a floppy out of like almost like a box that
right,
they ran for party. And I believe they ran it like 3 or 4 times that game.
right,
And then the other one was one that we actually ran it. We called it Horns Lift, where it's kind of like a Tom Izzo staple, where you're coming up with like a double ball screen. The point guard can choose which side he wants to go off of, and then one dives, the screener dives, and then the other one stays spaced and pops.
right.
So those were the two big ones that we went over. But we don't really we'd probably go over at max like 3 to 4.
So is it fair to say that the expectation of all your players is that they all know how to guard it regardless of who they end up on matchup wise?
Yeah, because that's something that we kind of go over, and we're not really super picky on okay, so take the floppy for example. Like we talked about, if you can chase over, chase over. If not, if you can't chase over and stay attached to your guy, what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch that last screener.
Right,
And so we kind of went in with the expectation of everybody knowing that. And same with the Horns Lift. Like any ball screen set for us, we go over like middle side, empty side ball screens because we trap ball screens. So we go over kind of all those scenarios. You're just doing it from a set, but it's kind of the same spacing in general.
right,
So that's stuff that we kind of go over and we expect everybody to know. Going back to your matchup question, because I think that's a really good point too. We do like to have specific matchups. Like there was a kid that we would always want on our best player, on
right.
the opposing team's best player, but we're not going to sacrifice like an open layup or an open three in order to get a matchup. So from there, it does become kind of near man kind of rule.
Oh, okay. Are there any ways that you teach to get that particular person back, or are you relying, like what I mean by that is, let's say Connor is supposed to always be on Menelik. Like that, you're our best defender and Menelik's their best offensive player. Once upon a time going back, but let's just say hypothetically, and you ended up not matching up to me. Are there ways that you try to switch back or rotations that you try to implement in your practices to get them back? Or is that possession basically a buy until the next one where you can get them back, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say that it was a buy for the most part. I feel like if we had different personnel, it would be different.
Right.
I think that you could tell by watching us on film, we have pretty good athletes, pretty
Yeah.
long guys. And we got a lot of guys that can defend at least 1 through 4, if not 1 through 5.
Okay.
And so that definitely helped a lot with just our general personnel. But there would definitely be let's say we drop back into a press and we don't have the guy we want on their best player.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an action that he's involved in, dribble, handoff, down screen, whatever, flare screen, whatever, we're switching it to get back onto that matchup.
Right.
But unless something like that was to happen, we wouldn't get back on the matchup.
Very interesting. So the other thing that I wanted to ask relating to pressing all the time is that, like, do you find that you threw a lot of teams off of what they did because you just didn't stop going at them? And the reason that I asked this, and I believe I asked Rich it too, but like I went through a period, it was more like AAU basketball. I went through a period where like I was pressing a lot, like pretty much 80-90% of the game as well, because it allowed me to get more players in and you create turnovers. And at that level, people see coverage and they're like, oh my God. But that being said, I think one of the real advantages of it is that if you're a team that spends 60%, 70% of your time preparing your half court offense, and then you come and play a game against Great Lakes where you guys are going to press them and you don't get to really do anything in the half court, you've basically thrown out 70 or 80% of that team's practice time. because now they're not prepared to play against you. Did you catch anybody throughout the season like really off guard with that? And do you think that it's something that you always keep in your back pocket, having it be part of your coaching tree that, hey, maybe I might just do this to junk it up against that team moving forward?
So this is actually a pretty interesting question because when I got to Great Lakes, I was kind of hesitant on the whole, pressing 40 minutes. And I knew that this is how we're going to play. And I knew we had success with it. So who was I to question,
Right.
what was
Right.
going on? But, that was something that I definitely feel like has been a huge advantage for us.
Interesting.
On top of like how we play in the half court, where if we don't like a post matchup, we'll trap it. We trap every ball screen. We
Yeah.
deny one pass away. We're no middle. So all of these principles where we're trying to create chaos both in the full court and in the back court and in the front court and the half court, I think all of that really just goes really well together. And then on top of that, it fits into our offensive philosophy where we gave our guys a ton of freedom this past year. And by giving them that kind of freedom and wanting to instill that we're going to get more possessions than the other team, we're going to play faster than the other team, we're going to wear them down over the course of 40 minutes. By doing that, it allowed our guys to just be who they are and not necessarily think and put too much thought into what they were doing. Obviously, we had concepts, we had principles, we had sets that we ran, but for the most part, we knew what we wanted offensively and they knew what we wanted offensively, and we were able to get it. Now, there would be times when, like I'll talk about in this game too, where like our freedom got the best of us. We took
Right.
bad shots, we went negative.
Right.
But that's part of what we're living with. Because at the end of the day, if we're able to take away those moments to the guys and let them play and teach them, you're doing this wrong or you're doing that wrong or that was a bad shot, and they're able to correct it and then make the extra pass on the next possession, that's a win because you're teaching the guy how to play basketball.
Right.
And sure, that's something that's very undervalued to me, is like, at the end of the day, we're teaching them how to be better basketball players. We're not teaching them how to be better at executing our sets.
Interesting. What percentage of the time would you say you were practicing pressing of your practices? Like, do you still do advantage defense, advantage disadvantage type stuff out of the press? And, like, are you always talking about new rotations? I know, like, I've seen a couple of your games now, obviously, from Great Lakes, and like there's various presses that you guys use too. So what percentage of the time are you practicing that kind of stuff?
So I'd say on average, we're spending at least 20 to 25 minutes on our presses.
Wow.
And that is over the course of about an hour and a half out of season, an hour and a half in season.
Right.
Our practice time. And that's kind of like Rich's baby.
Right.
He loves to mix up the looks. He loves to be able to find different, like we would have them set up in different press breaks without them knowing it, that we would know that we were going to see in the future.
Right.
And we would talk about, where you're playing two at, which two you're playing, who's, our teaser, who's our taker, who's our reader, different positions in the 2-2-1.
Right.
And then out of the diamond, like, okay, if they align this way, you're going to have to take this swing pass instead of the skip pass. You're going to have to play the skip pass a little harder than the swing pass. Right. Kind of different elements like that, just to be able to mix up looks for them. And kind of like our goal is, like Rich always said, is like, whenever a guy messed up a rotation or something, he'd be like, you're thinking too much. We want you to go out there and react and be an athlete.
Right.
So that was kind of our way of being able to mix up looks, is like, we're not talking about, okay, this is what Olivet's going to do versus our press. We had no idea what Olivet was going to do versus our press, but just as an example, we just said, okay, in the course of our practice time, like, okay, we're going to run this, and we know that this is what Boyce is going to pull out the next time that we play them out of their press break.
So last question I have, sort of before we get into some sort of film, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free, dump it in the chat, unmute yourself, whatever it is. But that being said, last question I I sort of have before we move on to some video is you were saying that it was your first scout of the year that you were doing all by yourself, and now you've had the experience of doing quite a few of them throughout the year on your own, and also as part of a collaboration. When you look back and rewatch this game, because I know you did, I know you love to prepare. Or were there any things in there that you were like, damn, I really missed that. That should have gone in the scout, or I didn't scout that properly. Maybe I should have made an adjustment. And then, anything sort of like in game now that like refreshes you, like, hey, at halftime, we were saying this. We were, you guys were up a lot at the half in this game. You were up like 13 or whatever. Anything that you were like, we missed this in the first half, so we tried to implement it in the second half, or any coaching changes on the other side any coaching strategies on the other side that jumped out at you, all those kinds of things that when you look back at the whole process that was involved, halftime, the other coaching staff, what you put on paper and conveyed, are there any things that were either errors or things that you would change, or maybe you would have played it a little bit different? Or was there a lot of things now that you look at that we're going to talk about in film that were implementation things?
Yeah. So first of all, starting with the scout, I would say that my biggest error in that scout was not being specific on how we were going to guard Chris Young, the guy that I was telling you about, the guy that
Right.
I think he had like 18. He was the guy, the downhill driver. I needed to be more specific about that. And by me not doing that, I feel like I kind of put us at a disadvantage, especially in the second half where we were kind of late making that adjustment when we should have been a lot earlier on it and should have
Right.
been doing it the whole game. I think that overall, Olivet made some really good halftime adjustments, and they loaded up on our gaps driving. As you could see, like we did a really bad job spacing the floor in the second half of that game.
They also scored 53 points in that second half, so you definitely have to give them their credit there, right?
No,
Like
definitely,
they came
definitely.
out for sure.
They did an amazing job. And then we had a guy who was kind of similar, but a little bit more skilled, but was a really big downhill driver that played the point guard spot for us. And they said, hey, we're not going to guard you until you hit the free throw line. And he wasn't as powerful as the kid that I'm talking about from Olivet. So guarding him on the free throw line actually worked pretty well because he was still a pretty skinny kid.
Right.
And then the other one that they did was they went from their deep drop, they went to more switch heavy in their ball screen coverage.
Right.
And looking back on it, I think that we should have been prepared for that, especially like the ball screen coverage, especially because that's something that like, okay, like what's going to be their adjustment? I know I only had one game to go off of, but the easy answer is you're in your second game of the season. You've probably only put one coverage in. What's the easy answer that they're probably going to come up with? They're going to switch.
Right.
And we needed to be better prepared for that. And then overall, in the second half, we just had way too many negatives. Bad shot into bad transition defense into easy point, lazy press into easy bucket, not getting into the press into easy bucket. And we coasted in the second half, and that really hurt us. But going into it, when we're up with such a big lead, we're kind of thinking to ourselves like, okay, like, we're doing what we need to do. We got to keep doing what we need to do. Rich would always say like, going into halftime, like, we're going to take them right out of the game. We're going to just, as soon as we have a big lead at halftime, the first thing he's always telling the guys is like, we're coming out, we're hitting them with another run right away, and we're just going to mentally drain them for the rest of the game.
Right.
And one of the things that was a constant struggle for us this year, and a lot of it has to do with, the amount of freedom that we gave our guys is, a lot of times our offensive success was predicated on hitting tough shots.
Right.
We had talented players that hit tough shots, but you can't win a game against a good team or even a bad team over the course of 40 minutes expecting to manufacture 10 to 12 of your points off tough shots.
Right.
And
I would agree with you.
Yeah. And I think that was just an unrealistic expectation for us. And actually, that's what came to bite us in the butt against Defiance. We actually took a loss to Defiance the next game. I think we had an even bigger lead at halftime, and we actually blew it because that was the same thing we were doing. We were relying on tough shots.
So I said one more question, but I got one more because it came up while you were giving that answer, and I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Connor, I actually, part of the reason I really wanted to do this show with you is I actually really respect your point of view on the game. I know from a personal standpoint how hard you're working on getting better and how much time you spend in the lab and all that. But so my question is this, because I think you're actually quite a bit ahead of where I was when I was your age. That being said, the adjustments that you mentioned that they make, are you at a point now where you notice most of those on the floor? Or are you noticing a lot of those in film afterwards? What do you think? Like, how adept are you at the counters that are happening in game at this point?
So that's actually one of the biggest things that I honed in on during this extended off season. Was I just kind of went into it and I
Bichet's
was
drunk. Sorry.
it's all good. But I just kind of went. I dove into as many games as I could, whether that was ours or other people's games, and constantly within quarters, within timeouts, within halves, I'm looking for okay, what is their adjustment? What are they doing differently?
Right.
And now I feel like I have gotten to the point where I can pick those out a lot
Right.
easier. But one of the things too is like you can know what the adjustment is, but you have to be able to already kind of have practiced your adjustment to their adjustment, if that makes sense. Like, okay, they're switching up our ball screen coverage. We're not going to try to attack a switch a way that we don't know how, that I know how on the fly.
So, like, you would have had to have already implemented some sort of way to do that previously before you're going to be at the point where you're comfortable implementing it in a game type deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something, yeah, and that's just something that like I firmly just like really don't believe in unless like the answer is like really simple.
Right. Right.
Like I don't think that you can just say like, okay, here's what we're gonna do every time they switch a ball screen, and we haven't went over it.
Right.
It's not something that we've practiced as a team, so I can't expect my guys to go out there and execute it.
So I would say that that's a tricky one, and that comes, uh, not that comes, but like there's different answers in different situations there. I don't know that that will be a hard and fast rule all your life, but hit me up in 10 years and let me know if that's changed or not for sure. That being said, let me jump into a little bit of film. I'm going to put mine up first. You're actually the first guest I've had that prepared some film of his own from the game. So I'll go first. I just have like 10 short clips because I know you put together some stuff. Most of it's on the press, couple sets that I like type deal. So give me 1 second here. We'll get the video panel going and we'll get you down here. So our first one's an easy one. Just basically transition threes, yay or nay in your opinion, and yay or nay for your team. So it's just a walk up and pull. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so believe it or not, I am a big proponent of transition threes.
Okay.
If they're catch and shoot. Now, if we're going for personnel here, this kid, number 2, shooting the ball, probably one of the best shooters that I have ever been in the gym with. And that's not an
Wow.
understatement. He was, as a junior, I think he was a top 20 in the NAIA in 3-point percentage on like a large
Right.
number of attempts. So this kid was actually a kid that used to wake me up, bang on my door at 6 a.m. every day to work him out. And we worked on very, very simple stuff like shooting off movement, shooting catch and shoots, shooting these pull-ups and ball screen stuff. So if there's anybody I would want taking a pull-up 3, it's that kid. And the fact that it's wide open makes me feel a little bit more comfortable as well.
So for you moving forward, do you think you will always have the same viewpoint, or will it become more situation specific and personnel specific, all that kind of thing? Like, you mentioned you're a big. I'm actually a huge advocate of it as well. That and after the offensive rebound, get it out, get it up. But
No,
some
definitely.
coaches have different viewpoints on it.
I'm the same way, and like I think that the catch and shoot thing to me, I don't think will ever change. Um, Obviously, you might have a guy that can't shoot catch and shoot threes
Right.
that you're gonna have to tailor that to. But I kind of go. I've kind of based my philosophy on the whole, and I'm sure you probably see this as well. But I've kind of tailored it to the whole Furman Bob Ritchie philosophy. When I heard him speak on a clinic, is if you can't shoot, don't recruit. Um, and I know you're laughing because you know how,
Love
but
it.
that's something that I would have to cross when we come to it. But the only time I would feel comfortable with the pull up three in transition, and it may change over time, is if it's like one dribble, if it's a rhythm dribble, or if he's like absolutely wide open. Definitely not out of like any kind of move or contested.
Awesome. Next one's another shot selection one. It's you guys in the half. It's a poor shot, I believe. I don't know. I don't know if I'm setting the expectation as to what the comments would be, but let me know what you see. And would you make a correction in game, or would you just kind of like live with it? Like, just give me the viewpoint of what you see and what's going on here. Is it smooth for you, by the way?
Yeah, it actually is pretty smooth. All right, so no, that's terrible.
Yeah. All right. So we'll,
That's
one more
awful.
time, I'll just go through it
I
as
think
we're
they
walking
scored
up.
off of this too. Like they ran out in transition and scored off of this. I think I have this in my video.
There we go. So this is just in the left slot. There's a screen.
Atrocious.
Where Jackson pulls up from behind
Yeah.
the spot. It's pretty contested.
Yeah. No.
So I mean, what would be?
I'm sorry. Go
How
ahead.
would you deal with this? Like, I was just gonna say, how would you deal with this? There's 12 minutes left. You're in the second half. They've been on a bit of a push, so they've kind of mitigated your lead. And this is a pretty quick shot, like fairly early in the shot clock. He's walking over. He's playing a little one-on-one. Like, what would you do in this situation? Is there yelling and screaming? Is there in the next huddle I say something, or do you just kind of let it play and make a play call in the next one type deal?
It's more or less a in the huddle type deal. If anybody's screaming, it's going to be Rich. That's for
Right.
sure.
Right.
But it's more of an in the huddle type deal where I tell them like, hey, like this isn't the shot that we want to take. One thing that we always try to preach to our guys and try to get in our head, and I feel like this was pretty early in the season. Towards the end of the year, we did a much better job. Was good for great. And
Right.
this is a bad shot in general, but in this kid's head, I'm assuming he's thinking like we always had guys that would say like, "Oh, that's a workout shot. Like I work on that." Yeah, just because you work on it doesn't mean it's a good shot.
Right.
I could shoot from the volleyball line. It doesn't mean that it's a good shot.
Yeah. I work on that shot. It doesn't mean it falls at a good percentage. I'm gonna stop for a second and just pull up the question here. That's the shot that gets you taken out of the game, is what James says. I agree, James, for sure. For sure. That's the one that develops the eye twitch and gets me upset. It makes me think of, there was a Patrick Ewing clip that was trending from last season where he's in the huddle and he's like, "Have you ever shot that shot?"
Yeah,
Like, why are you shooting that shot type deal? Like, it's just a funny clip for sure.
That's one of my favorite ones.
Sorry, Connor. What did you say?
So that's one of my favorite ones on Twitter.
Yeah, it's great. Let's get into your 2-2-1 back to man. Here's one of the first ones. This is fairly early in it. I have a different question for each one of the clips. I'll run each one individually and stop it, see if I can remember what my questions were.
Okay, this looks good. Okay.
And then you end up in a half court set here.
This is their floppy.
Yeah. So I think my question for this particular one was pretty much answered in the pre-discussion with you in terms of when you're set up, especially early in the game. Are you worried about specific matchups when you fall back into the man up to man? And what do you do if you end up with the wrong matchups? And how much are you spending time on the scouting of those particular sets? So I think all of those were pretty much answered by what you said at the beginning. Okay. How would you say your guys did overall in terms of everything on this without being married to the result of him getting trapped down and I don't even think they end up with a decent shot. Oh, they
Oh,
get
they
a
do.
shot in
They
the
do.
yeah, they do. They do.
No, so if you can go back to the beginning of the possession, and I could just sort of go through this here. So right here, as soon as that pass goes right there, all right, we need to be up in that guy. We did a really bad job of ball pressuring out of this 2-2-1.
Right,
And that's where they got a lot of the diagonal passes that we talked about on the phone prior to this is
right,
the diagonal passes won't happen if you're pressuring the ball, or
right,
they'll at least be harder passes to throw. They're just, I mean, they were just zipping it through like, they're playing catch out there. So you go back to there, like he catches it on the swing back. This guard catches it on the swing back, and it's the same situation. We don't have enough ball pressure. That leads to an easy straight line pass right to that corner. Um, Two, if you play it through a little bit more to that pass. So right here, two, he needs to be a little quicker reacting. He was probably our slowest guard on the team. So I'm not anticipating that to be a steal, but
right,
I would like him to be a little bit faster getting into that pass. And we always talked about it as moving on the flight of the ball. Um,
right.
that was a big thing for us as a pressing team. And then if you go to this empty side ball screen here into the floppy, so floppy, we're okay with this matchup on 12 because that
Can I
kid's
interrupt you real quick just before you get into the floppy? Sorry.
yeah.
When you get to this point, have you at this point considered we've done our job and now we just want to play in the half court? Or are there different variations where you're still in all out pressure at this point type deal?
Yeah, so actually there's a possession like that that I have on video, and like Rich kind of leaves that all up to feel.
Okay.
So like let's say that guy who was reaching back to two, if he wants to go trap that, he gets free reign to trap. And we give, and he always gives that. He says if you feel like you can be opportunistic and you have something you want to take advantage of, then do it. So this ball screen right here, that's a good spot for a trap. Our trap isn't great. We got to get there a little bit quicker, but we get him in a good spot here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to where he picks it back up, if you go to where he picks the ball back up, right here, right? So he shouldn't leave. That guy who trapped 15, who was the screeners man, we don't
Right.
want him leaving that.
Right. Because that's the worst possible place that offensive player could be on the court. Like,
Yeah, no, definitely. And from there, whenever we're trapping, one of our basic principles, and it's a basic principle for everybody, is you're taking away the obvious pass. So if he still traps there, then we're taking away the obvious pass, and we want to force long and opposite.
right.
And then overall, that was just, it's a unfortunate situation there and how that kind of ended, but it kind of ended in sort of like a scramble kind of scenario that you're really not practicing.
And then, so we got another one here. We're still in 2-2-1. This, I think you answered a little bit of it on this previous explanation. But my question was this diagonal pass, and we've talked about it before. Like, to me, I almost feel sometimes like, what's the point of pressing if we're going to allow or not interfere with this throw over diagonal type deal? So I'm just wondering sort of what your teaching points are, who should be coming. You mentioned that the guy on the ball needs to be giving more pressure on the ball, but what about in the back? Do you run at this? Is it a feel? Should you be trapping on the catch? Should you be now man on the catch? What are you guys doing, and what do you see when you watch this clip? I can let it play through too. I didn't let it go to the end. I don't even remember what happens beyond that. I think that was just my question there.
Yeah. No, it's all good. So that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
you can take
fine.
that shot. That's fine.
So we're coming. So when we're coming here, this is all right there. That's all ball pressure. To me, that's all ball pressure. And because we have to be able, if you go back again, I'm sorry. If you go back again, that's good. If you go back again right here, so when the ball's on that side of the floor, that second level opposite is the one who's taking away the middle flash. So this 22, I believe, or 23, he should be shaded over towards the sideline a little bit more. And now this back guy should be playing a little more in the center field.
Are you talking him here as 22?
Yeah, I can't see his number. I'm
It
sorry.
looks like 12 to me, but you might be right. It might be 22. Your
Um,
numbers are very difficult to see. Sorry. Anyways, he should be more towards the sideline and he should be more towards the middle of
yeah,
the
he should be, and we kind of fix it here a little bit, and
right.
then we want this back guy to be more in a center field position.
Right.
But off of this pass, one thing that we always preach is our back pursuit within the press. Because right now, this looks kind of, if the offensive player's looking, this looks kind of appealing to him, right? He kind of got a 2-on-1 for a little bit.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is we want to force that turnover or a quick shot off of our back pursuit. So we are telling these two guys to get back as fast as possible, try to make a play, try to anticipate it, or try to cut him off at the point of attack and force a tough shot at the rim. And by
Right.
doing that, that's increasing our tempo on the other end.
Interesting. Like it. So then I think the most typical way of beating a press is with a middle flash. What are your teaching points? I think you're making a little bit of a laugh or a smirk because you're already disappointed. I'll let the clip play out as to what you get.
Oh, that's even worse.
But what do you see in terms of the middle flash and how could it be
Okay, we're not
done?
even set up in this to start. Um,
Right.
we're kind of screwed from the start on our setup in general, and then keep playing a little bit. Pause it once he catches the ball. Okay, so our bad guy's not set up, but also we need that front guy on the right side of the floor.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to be able to play that a little bit better, because what we always say from that opposite guy at the first level is we're going to give up anything. We're going to give up any swing pass or anything back.
Right.
Swing pass back, that doesn't hurt us. Middle flash, especially in that scenario, that hurts us, right? So overall, like we're kind of done from the start because he's not in. We don't have anybody in a really good position here, and they're able to get something out of it. I think we did a good job of speeding him up. The only thing is we got to cut that guy off at the point of attack rather than just running straight by him.
Right. My
If
one
we
other
cut him
question.
off, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say if we cut him off and he picks up his dribble or like he goes into like a tough layup off us cutting him off, that's a win for us. Because even though it's a shot at the rim, it's still a tough shot at the rim with the
Right.
angle that he has.
Well, I found it interesting that this guy didn't cut loose. He stayed on the corner
Yeah.
and then let other people recover. My other question on this one was, what about the initial angle of the top right guy when facing the ball, top like on the floor, top right? So he'd be sort of middle of the screen right here, but like on the top row of the 2-2-1, the guy who would be on the top right of that.
Opposite of the
Do
ball.
you mind him facing the ball, or do you want him sort of splitting and doing two and staying below the line of it?
So we want him splitting and doing two. In a perfect world, this in a perfect world, that guy only comes over, that bottom right guy, he only comes over if we get a turn or he picks up his dribble.
Right.
That's in
Uh,
that's in a perfect world. Like if ideally what we want is we want that guy to sort of play. He's going to be guarding two. And the two that he's going to be guarding is the swing back and then essentially that really tight middle flash like that was there. Like it was a deeper middle flash is going to be the second guy. And that's kind of like a quarters rule
right.
that was talked about on here.
Right.
And that's him playing his quarters and understanding that you can't get beat middle. You could we want you to if you're giving up a pass, it's got to be a swing back or just a swing pass.
Awesome. I got one more, and this is just they scored, and it's a quick inbounds and go. And I'm just wondering, do you encounter a lot of times? I don't think it's too different from the previous clip,
I
but
have that one on in here. It's that's simply like us not getting into our press. And we had a lot. Like I probably have a minute and a half video of us not getting into our press.
all right, I'll leave that for you to comment on when you get to it. Then I got a couple of the half court defense ones, and this one, I think there's 3 long closeouts in it. So I'm just kind of wondering what your point of view is on how you guys defended. There's one, it's 2 long closeouts, I believe.
Okay.
So what do you see? I'll play it a couple times for you. What do you see? How could you do better? Where does it fall apart? That kind of stuff.
Okay, pause it.
So I would actually, even right here, consider this a fairly long closeout. But
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think more or less like there's really not like an action there or anything to break down. I think that's more or less of, that's his number's 32. That's more of like more or less 32 not really being aware.
right,
And so if you go in here and you see him, you see one start to attack downhill here, you play it through just a little bit. One attacking down, he's backing up, he makes one move. Now we've given up an early paint touch, we've given up middle. And by us giving up middle in this possession, that's the whole basis of our half court defense is we don't give up middle.
right.
So by doing that, we're now putting ourselves in situations that we don't practice nearly as often. Because essentially that's the basis of our defense. We don't want to give up middle, so we're going to work on our rotations with our philosophy. So he passes it out here. You can go ahead and go to the pass out here. Okay. So 10 really didn't need to help there. That guy from the corner. I don't think he really needed to help on that as much. It was kind of a tight window.
This
But
player
he
here.
gets back on this closeout. Yeah. And if you see how he's angled right here, he's angled to give him middle again.
Yeah, I would agree. In fact, he even closes on his baseline hip.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
kind of olays as he goes by.
Exactly. And you can't be a no middle team because if you're a no middle team, you're gonna be put on closeout scenarios. And you can't be a no middle team if you're not very good at no middle closeouts. And that time we give up 2 middle drives. That's the whole basis of our offense or of our defense. We're just kind of screwed from the start on this entire possession. And then he gets stuck. I don't even know what you would call that, but he gets stuck just off a cutter and it ends up that's probably one that you would switch, but the big thing here is just we can't give up that much middle, especially on one possession.
So then a couple things, not to beat a dead horse or anything, couple things in this that I wanted to ask you about specifically is you mentioned that you're no middle team. So basically for anybody who's listening who can't see it, it's a 1-4 flat baseline out of bounds, 1-4 low, whatever you want to call it. They pop, they go on the ball side at the left slot, they reverse the ball to the right slot, and then they attack and get middle. And when they attack and get middle, they I would say probably burn the worst shooter on the weak side of the floor. My question to you becomes, do you guys typically collapse this many players, or is this an overhelp situation?
Overhelp.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
overhelp, does that also, like, I guess the answer is yes, but that then contributes to the long closeouts type deal, right?
Yeah. And that's something that we talk about as well, your whole scenario there where one, it's overhelp just because the spacing is not good enough for our bottom guy guarding. I don't know who that number is, 0, who was playing sort of in that opposite on that block spot right there off that drive or
Right.
short corner. Their spacing's not good enough there to the point where he can't guard two. The guy
Right.
guarding the short corner guy. There's
Right.
there's no reason for that help. And then on top of that, you're now helping off of a guy, and like you talked about, you burn the worst shooter in a scenario like that.
Yeah. He's
We've
playing
already
against
talked
a long
about like
closeout,
this
and then when
guy.
they go the second time, it looks like you got 3 guys helping again, basically, right? Like
Yeah.
2 are caught in the paint, one sort of on the elbow. They pop to the point. He's got a wide open shot, basically.
Yeah, and that's just him staying like he's got to stay attached off the cutter. 23, the guy who was on the wing, he didn't need to show there. Like he kind of stunted at him a little bit. We don't really stunt.
Right.
So it was just that's just a really bad half court defensive possession for us in general.
So then, getting into this, how do you correct? Is this something that you mentioned you pulled clips, and we're going to take a look at your clips in a second. Is this something that you would go one-on-one to a guy later, or would you say something in the game type deal?
So something like this is definitely something that we're talking about in the game. We always preach no middle during the game. But on top of that as well, this is something that is making our film on this team. Like we watch film, like you said, you watch film before your scout. We watch film after our games, like every
Right.
team. So that's making our film session as a whole team where, as a whole team, we messed up there.
Right. I'll get into a rotations clip. I forget what my comment was on this, but they throw over your press. You get into the half court, and getting into the half court here, there's an attack from the left wing, left slot area. They skip the ball to the other side,
Yep.
and then when they skip it to the other side, they just one more it, and they've got a wide open shot. It looks like nobody's coming. There's
Yep.
no X, so to speak. So I'll run that back from when it gets into the front court. But what do you see from somewhere in here?
Okay, so if you can pause it right there. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back just a little? Yeah, that's good.
Like right
Okay,
here?
so you can go even, yeah, right there, right there, right there. That's perfect. Okay. So this is kind of like, and this is the same scenario here. Like this kid that's guarding number one, like I said, he torched us all game.
Right.
And these are, in my opinion, like their instincts, like, okay, like this kid's gonna score when he gets a head full of steam going to the hoop.
Right.
So there's no need for this guy guarding number 3 to pinch off of that drive.
Right.
And actually, if he's attacking anyone, we want him attacking the kid that he's guarding because that kid's like 6'6", 200 something, and he's got like 2 inches, a wingspan advantage, and probably at least like 30 pounds on him. So if he's gonna go up with anybody, like go straight up with anybody, it's gonna be this kid. Like we would be okay with that.
Right.
And so by this guy helping off this drive who was guarding 3, he's kind of, I mean, you're putting 10 on the bottom in the corner. You're putting him in a really bad situation where now it's hard for us to rotate out of this. Like we worked on double side rotations a lot. But if there was supposed to be help, we would help from our low guy. The bottom guy would drop.
Right.
23, the guy who's guarding, and now he's playing too. He takes first pass, corner guy closes back out to second pass.
Right. So like a typical X out on the help side. So anybody who's listening, basically they've got penetration from the left wing, and there's a player on the help side of the floor. There's a player in the point, a player in the right slot, and a player in the right corner offensively. And on that penetration, they kick out to the right slot, or high wing, whatever you want to call it. And basically the player who is the low man or the most important guy on the right side of the floor is in a heap of trouble, in that he's got to close first and second, but he knows nobody else is coming because the double had come off of that right wing. And he tries to steal a pass, but we're looking at a wide open shot basically at that point. And fortunately you rebound and bust out, but
it's a game we're always busting out.
that's it. So then this one had to make it just because we were talking about it. Also, I had noticed it. I think you see it twice in here.
Yeah.
I'll let this run through so you can take a look at it. And then I'll go through and talk it through one time, and then I'll ask you about it. But what I found funny about this, so I'll run it one more time. Basically, they bring the ball over half. Left side has got 3. The right side has got 1. There's a handoff to the right. And then on the first ball screen in the right slot, they hedge. And then they reverse. They don't get anything out of it. And then they reverse again. Ball almost gets away. And then they get into another ball screen from the right slot. And it looks like, a soft hedge, kind of a show and over type deal. And then on the attack, he gets all the way to the rim and gets the layup. So my questions for you, Connor, which I know are not going to be worth it because we talked about it, but my question was, what did you guys see that you went away from trapping as you had been doing for the rest of the game? And I know that your answer was, we didn't go away from trapping. So we ended up with 2 hedges basically, or a hard hedge and kind of a soft hedge, or a flat and over, whatever you want to call it, in the middle of the game. So my new question then would be, in watching this while you're in the game, what do you guys do? How do you address that you're just, decided to start playing a totally different coverage than what you work on and do?
So a lot of this is a lot of it's just verbal. There's really no adjustment to make. Like I honestly, like I don't remember the substitution patterns, but like if that was to happen, I would assume that that the big's coming out of the game in that scenario.
Right, right.
And like I said, I don't remember the substitution pattern, so I could be wrong. But that's definitely not acceptable. And I
Well,
don't
it's funny because
know.
it's a decent hedge.
It is like he did a really good job. He really did. Like that hard hedge was a freaking killer, man. Maybe we should have done that. Like,
I
but
was like, hey, what did you guys see that you went to it? And when we were talking, you're like, we weren't hedging. I'm like, oh no, sorry, man.
no, ball screen coverage is a non-negotiable at Great Lakes.
Right. Okay.
And it's definitely the way it goes.
See you later, James. He's just putting in the chat, dinner time. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you.
But yeah, there's really nothing, not much more to kind of rehash there other than.
Yeah, that's it. Just basically you're probably coming out, you're being politely reminded, and go back to it type deal.
Yep.
There was one set that you guys ran a few times. I put in one where you got something out of it, but basically it's a wing pass, and then I would call this a butler cut where you go through to the strong side corner.
Okay.
And then at the same time, you're bringing the opposite wing on a shuffle cut, on a slice cut, whatever you want to call it, over the nail where there's a screen, and it creates a high split. And then you're playing out of that high split. There were a couple times where you got the pin down. He drops the guy there. I think that's why I put that one in. There were a couple times where instead of that pin down, that guy ends up going to the opposite side, and you play with the big in a two-man game up top. I was just kind of wondering what the teaching points were for this set. And like how often do you run it? What I don't know. Just give me some stuff on that set because I like this one.
Yeah, this is a Richard Westerland special right here. We'll run this, I'd say probably at least twice a game. And it is exactly what you're calling it. It's just a little like, and call it like we just called it like a shallow cut from the ball handler. And now we're right into a shuffle, and then we called it Ricky. Like Ricky is the screener, or
right.
Screen. I'm sorry. But we actually, so me and that kid, and I told you that's the same kid that would bang on my door at 6 a.m.
Right.
He could not come off this screen worth of crap. And this was one of the times I felt like he really did it right.
Right.
So he would come off of it.
Right?
he would come off of it. He would come off the shuffle, and then he'd like loop back through on the opposite side. And he didn't get a lot off of it when he was doing it. And that's something that like we worked on a lot, and we worked on like his catch and shoots out of this action. And then we worked on like his pull-ups out of the action as well.
Right.
So that's something that, we run a lot. We really loved it. And Rich still runs it all the time now. And honestly, I feel like at least 50%, if not 60 to 70% of the time, you're going to get a decent look off of this.
Yeah, I like the action for sure. It's stolen. It's going in the playbook. Thank you for that. Do you always teach the guy to rip and go opposite, or do you sometimes teach him to drive back to the double side? Like, is he reading which side the guy who's coming off the pin down is going to?
Yeah, so that's 100. That's 100% a read. I'd say probably over half the time that's more or less a catch and shoot.
Right.
But we're looking at where his man is coming off of that at. So if they switch it, we usually get a pretty good slip with that little pin down guy.
Right.
If they don't switch it, now he's reading which side is he chasing him off of, and then that's the opposite side is going to be where he's attacking from.
Nice. Love it. Love the set. So that's all the video I got. Before we jump into yours, I wanted to let you know we're at about an hour and 10 minutes right now. Are you good on time? I asked you for an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm a little bit over here. Just make sure you're good.
Come on, man. Who do you think I am?
uh,
I'm gonna get off this call and probably watch like the last Zalgiris game or something. I got nothing to do.
I hear you, man. I'm in the same boat, so don't worry. I feel you. That being said, all yours, man. You said you made a couple clips that sort of highlight your point of view on the game when you look back at it. I'll sit quiet and let them run through and let you take the helm, so to speak. It's all you. You should be able to share. Let me know if you can't.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. I appreciate that. If you have anything you feel like adding in as well, please just let me know.
For
Okay.
sure.
So I broke this into 4 different categories and they're just quick little minute videos. And I'm gonna go through them pretty quickly because I feel like me and Menelik have done a pretty good job kind of deep diving on what we got going on here. But
Right.
the first one that we talked about is like Olivet was a team that wanted to play fast, and we always want to play fast. And we felt like we were better at our game than they were. So that was something that we really hit on in our scout is we're going to play fast. We're going to push the pace in any way we possibly can. So the first one is going to be playing at our pace. So you're going to see here, is that skipping?
A little bit. Yeah. It's. Did you optimize when you went to share it? Because
No, I did not.
no.
Is there a way I could do that?
Yeah, when you're in the call, if you go up at the top, you can hover over that menu, and then there's a drop down menu at the top right. It's like the actual Zoom menu, not the menu of this window.
Okay.
Or when you go to share, when you hit share screen now, there should be 2 little boxes at the bottom where you
I see
select
it.
it.
I
Yeah,
see it.
you just click optimize video, and it makes it a lot smoother.
Awesome. 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 All right. Let's see if this works now. All right. Let me know how this looks. Better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, cool. So we're talking about playing at our pace and we're trying to instill our pace in any way we possibly can. So right here, it's going to come off of a post double, right? Anytime we don't like a matchup in the post, we're going to double it. We're always going to double from the low man.
Right.
And then we're going to have our guy on the 2 side on the wing here. He's going to drop down. And then this guy at the top of the key here, he's going to drop down as well. Guy on the wing's playing 2, guy at the top of the key's playing 2 as well.
Right.
So here we come. We get our double off the bounce, right? We got him in a good spot here. He spins back out, makes a pass out of it, and we end up getting a turnover right off of that. And now we're playing the other way. The kid actually gets the stuff glassed here. But it's just showing the point of like, even when we're not playing in the full court, we're still using our half court defense to get the other team playing at the pace we want them to play at.
Right.
So now we got
It's
another one here
amazing
right
how
off the
many
miss.
actions you can blow up by a simple double, right? Like there's appropriate times in a lot of sets that it just totally messes up other teams.
No, definitely. Definitely. Especially like if you throw it in and you can find a way to throw it in like every now and then. And it's not something that teams are prepared for if they're not seeing it all game. I think it's great. And I'm all for even myself personally, I'm all for being able to find ways to create an extra possession or 2 for yourself. And I
Right.
think that's a great way to do it. So right here, we're pushing off a miss here. So we get the rebound. We're pushing hard on the break. This guy runs a really great lane. And he runs wide. He spaces out, almost gets to the deep corner before this guy makes a pass, right? He sees help and he passes where the help's coming from. And that's an easy 3. And that's something that we talked about a lot. Like I said, we love corner threes. We love corner catch and shoot threes. And that was a big deal for us, is being able to space the floor, run wide, run high, and be able to get these wide open threes.
Love it.
So off of this one here, we're going into I think I just wanted to, so we have the shot selection here, right? You see the shot clock here. All right. So we have this kid taking a contested floater with 25 seconds on the shot clock. That's a win for us. No matter what kind of situation we're in, that's a win. And now we're pushing right off of it as well. And this is probably my favorite possession of the entire game. We got this a lot at the end of our season, really pushing this 2 side on the break. And we didn't get it as much in the beginning of the season, but once we started getting it, we were really, really good at it. So here we're coming down, we're pushing the two side, we advance on the pass. We already got our 2-on-1 exactly how we wanted on the two side, right? And now he's dribbling. This guy commits, and now it's just an easy one more in the corner for an open corner three. The board there or whatever it is kind of takes it away. But that was a big part of our transition attack. We'd do shooting drills to make that extra pass, called it one more shooting. And then we also did different transition advantage drills where we really worked on, shooting these catch and shoot threes, making the extra pass, or getting an early paint touch out of the two side. So now we're going to come into a ball screen trap here. And this is once again us just playing fast. I'm sorry.
I remember this clip for sure. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So this is one of our traps here off the ball screen. So this is actually, so we ended up with a guard to guard in this scenario. So the screener's defender here is kind of placed in a situation he's probably not used to all the time. And this guy extends it out. That's a big no-no when trapping the ball screen. Ball handler can't extend it out to the other side of the floor. So now on top of that, with him extending it out of the floor, what we would be looking for out of this slot ball screen on the single side is we have our help side triangle that we want right here. We're going to tag with this, this corner guy.
Yep.
We're going to give up that pass. We're going to make him throw that long opposite pass where he's going in the opposite direction. And now we got these two playing the opposite side. And here, by him extending it out, we give up an obvious pass right here on the swing pass. But you're going to see right here is where we kind of have our own, like, Rich's theory is like, if you instinctually feel like you can get something, just go ahead and do it. And now we're getting a trap here off of the ball screen trap. And now that's kind of like our little chaos that we're creating to get an extra possession and get a layup at the rim. And that was all that kid. And that's something that Rich is fully bought into. He gives them total freedom on all of that. So now we got a bad press there. We get diagonal pass. But here, we're still pressuring off of it. We actually have 3 guys on the ball. We're able to rotate out of it. We force a bad pass. We're still pressing in a good spot. And we come back to the corner here. We're pressing a good spot. Boom, dead ball, turnover right there. Obviously, we prefer live ball turnovers, but that's a good one. I also had this clip in here because I just wanted to highlight just like a day in the life of sitting on the bench next to Rich. And if you look at him in this pink shirt right here, this sums it all up, right? We got the hands up. We're walking, right? We're up. Oh.
Love it.
And then he calls the travel from the ref. and then he's clapping on the bench right on the sideline. That's something that I think is almost necessary. And it's not, I shouldn't say necessary, but it really helps you. It really helps with the system that he plays, with how much energy that they have, that he reciprocates that same energy when he's coaching. And that's every day in practice.
Motion creates emotion. I've been saying that for a long time. Motion creates emotion. So if you want your guys to be lively and play hard for you and all that, do the same.
Right. So here we're off of a press here. We force a turnover off that press, just right on, I believe that was on the inbound, but I cut the clip a little too early. And boom, we're right here, right into transition 3. Catch and shoot, transition 3. And he was contested. Would he probably ripped it? Yeah, but he made it. And he's, I think, was like a 45% 3-point shooter or 42% 3-point shooter last year. So we're okay with that. And then right here, once again, just another trap. We're forcing this floater from their big, putting it on the floor, something that he's not comfortable doing. And now we're pushing in transition. We get a great rim run from our big, and we're going to the line. And those are just ways, like I said, half court stuff, being opportunistic and running the floor, really working that two side is just different principles that we really worked on a lot. And I felt like gave like a really good insight, not only on like how we won this game, but also in general of just like what Great Lakes basketball is about. So now we're going to get into some bad stuff here, and I'm only going to go over 2 or 3 clips because we hit the press pretty hard.
Yeah.
But right here, obviously, I don't know if you showed this one or not, but we're not ready. he throws that diagonal pass one hand. Like, I mean, he puts it down. We
Off
got
the
3
dribble too, just
dribbles.
like
Yeah, like he's just probing. And nobody's active or anything. They end up getting an offensive rebound out of this and into a score. And we close out here, just runs straight by him, bad closeout, right in a one dribble pull up for their best shooter. And this is the same thing here. All right, we're giving up this easy diagonal pass. If you go back here, right, giving up the middle. All right, he's opposite side right here. This opposite side guy's got to be responsible for this middle flash. But on top of that as well, like we talked about, 22 is in a bad position as well because he needs to be playing it a little bit as well.
right.
Where he's giving up the swing back. He's giving them the swing back, and we don't give up the swing back. That's not something that we do. So, and again, like our ball pressure in this game and our press really stuck. And we were a very good pressing team this year. So I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression like we weren't pressing. We were just beating a dead horse and we weren't a good pressing
Right.
team. We were a very good pressing team. But the issue, that's all stuff that was corrected. And similar to our ball screen stuff, where we had a couple shaky ball screen defensive possessions, we were one of the top, I want to say at least press, we were in like the 80 percentile. And if you possession filtered out by possessions, we were definitely more than the 80 percentile in synergy on press defense. And we were in like the top 90 percentile in ball screen defense. So we really, we had some issues to start, but we definitely started to correct them as the season went on. All right, so here we're talking bad offensive possessions to scores. This is the negative that we talk about. And right here, this is just, I mean, we're screwed from the start with this spacing. We got 2 guys on top of each other. We got 3 guys on the side right here. And we got 1 guy, I don't even know what you would call that, like 15 feet on the wing. Not like an elbow catch, not like a, like a delay catch at the top of the key. Like it's just not,
I don't know what I would call
not
either.
the kind of off. Exactly.
Post area, I suppose.
Yeah.
Kind of a pinch
and this
post.
is something like, yeah, there we go. Pinch post. And this is something that we hit on as well as we went on in the season is like, we really emphasized our spacing and we wanted our guys to work in space. And a lot of times, like I said, especially towards the end of the year, when we got into our conference play, we felt like we had the advantage when it came to talent. And if we could get our talent to attack long closeouts, get wide open shots, and create advantages with our space, we're sitting pretty, in our opinion. But so right here, he just ends up turning it over, I believe. And now they're off to the races right here. And we're just, I mean, we're not matching up well in transition there. This guy just floods right up the middle of the court or right up the wing. And this is the kid that was killing us all game, and nobody's matched up to him. If we're matching up to anybody, that's the kid we want to be matched up to. And it's just easy layup in transition for him. So here we're at it again, right? Bad spacing, really bad spacing. We're running it. We're working an empty side ball screen right here, except we have this guy at the top of the key, almost even with the nail extended. And I'm driving this gap. There's nothing good that can come out of this. And that's exactly what we do. We drive this gap. Easy turnover. Shot at the rim. This is all in the second half when they made their big run too. Right here. So this is like, this is one of our principles that we ran a lot. We would call it like a flow principle, and it was just a through cut. But this kid, number 22, was so good getting downhill that all he needed was space, and he'd be able to get a paint touch or create some kind of advantage. So right here, and we're just through cut right here, right off the drive. We're driving right off that through cut. And right here, he's getting downhill, right? He gets his paint touch. He draws help here. This is an easy pass to the corner where he lifts up a little bit, gets in a little bit better of a window. Still an easy pass to make. Right here, he pinches. And now he's bodying up with this kid. And like I talked about earlier, like he's a little bit skinny. I think he's put on some weight as he's went on. But he's not a guy that's going to power over people. He's more of a guy that's going to finish through with his length and his speed. So by him trying to power up this guy, like that's not what we want. And obviously bad miss, and they come back on the other end, I think, and get a shot at the rim right here. So I think I'm going to skip into the next video. Okay, so this is the last one, and we're just going to get into some offensive stuff here.
Awesome.
And these are actions that we utilize. I'm sorry, what?
I just said awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, these are actions that we utilized to defend in space. I don't know if it's like the screen sharing or what, but like every time, like it's like when you talk, like when you start, the voice is like skipped,
Yeah, you know what
and
I
I think
think it
it's
is?
because like of the optim.
I think it's my internet connection is a little bit slow today. So, like, I'm noticing I can hear what
Okay.
I say on your end a little bit late. So, apologies to anybody who's listening in and watching later. We apparently don't have very good internet connection up here in Canada, so gotta deal with it as best you can.
It's all right. It's all good, man. So we're gonna go to actions to make them defend in space. Like this is a big one that we talked about. We're gonna have some of our how we attack their drop in there as well. And so right here we're starting out. We this is just our simple same thing right here. We're through cutting right here. We get a corner cut in off of it, which is great. Get the defense moving a little bit more, and now we're attacking that gap right off a through cut, and that was something that we liked a lot. He ends up, I believe, getting a foul there. Probably should have been a jump ball, but it's another scenario here where we're trying to get our guys defending. We're trying to get our guys in space and letting them attack in space. Next one we got here. So this is actually the catch is super low here, but this is actually we ran a 21 series early in the season. We kind of went away from it later in the season, but we did have a good amount of success with it. And right here, it's just going to be, I believe, our 21 chase, where you're hitting this guy on the wing here. He's supposed to be on the wing, but he's a little lower. And right here, this read here is going to come from how his defender, the initial ball handler's defender, is playing it. So you see here, he's dropped down. He's dropped down. He's kind of falls asleep a little bit. That's an easy pitch right there. And now, like I said, that kid, he's finishing with his speed and his length every time at the rim. So now we're going to get in our, I believe this is, okay, so this is, our call for this was Ram Ghost.
Okay.
And this is more like a wedge action and a and a ghost screen. But we called it Ram Ghost for some reason. I don't know why. So right here, you're just going to see the corner comes in, sets a screen on the opposite side wing. Opposite side wing, he's sprinting into this. And this was just a tiny, tiny tweak that we made off of the switches, where we kind of anticipated this switch coming. And off of this, we're ghosting off of this switch. We ghost off this switch. Okay. Now we have one of our better scorers guarding their big. Their big was actually pretty mobile. So like a little bit harder to take advantage of a switch when their big's really mobile. And he ends up shooting off of this. Not a good shot again. But ideally what we would want here is we're ripping, getting downhill and attacking this big in space.
I could see that being Ram Ghost. Why you would call that? Like I thought a wedge personally. I thought a wedge was only if you're bringing a forward to set the screen, the secondary one. So like it's technically still a ram action, but it's a ram that specifically brings a forward to set the screen that you want to have happen. I might be wrong, but I thought that's what a wedge was.
I got you. I mean, that's just, for personally, any screen like that is just what I call a wedge.
Okay.
And
So
that might be like my
like
own
a
personal
ram is a
terminology.
screen to get the screener to come without his man, but like my
Yeah.
understanding is that a wedge is a specific type of ram that brings a forward to set the screen on the ball, specifically like on the side of the
Okay.
floor.
Gotcha. Okay. My like, and just my personal definition of it, and like I said, that's my personal definition. So I mean, I would assume that you're right. Um, but for me, like a ram would just be like a down screen. Like I
Right.
wouldn't consider that a down screen. It'd just be like a down screen into a ball screen. That's just like I
Right.
said,
Right.
my own personal. Um, but we missed the shot off that. And now here we're back in our 21 series. So this is 21 Chicago. We don't get a dribble handoff off of it, but we're down screening right here. and we're
Right.
looking to get into a dribble handoff, except, and this was something that I actually worked on with this kid. He kind of swung both ways. I was the head JV coach and he played JV as well. Um, and this was something I worked on with him where I said, like, if this kid has his advantage off the screen already, there's no point in going in a dribble handoff. Just throw it and
Just
let him
curl
go.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's exactly what we're looking off of right here. And now he's getting downhill. We're looking to attack that. And now he probably could have continued to attack the big, but he passes it back out. Now we're going empty side ball screen right here. And again, this is like stuff that we talk about in the scout is we're looking to attack this drop big. Like this is a pretty deep drop. So we're looking for
Yeah.
opportunities to get
Very
floaters
sure.
or pull ups right off of it. So right there, we're pulling up one dribble or 1-2 dribble pull up right off that for a mid range jumper. Next one, this is another one of our shuffle actions. This is shuffle pin. So like you said, starts the same time shallow cut, or butler cut, what do you call it? And now we're going just right into this wing to wing pin, or wing to block pin. I'm sorry, wing, and right off of here we get our pin. He doesn't really set the screen, but that's what our look is off of this is for a 3 off of that pin down. Right here we're following
Okay.
it up with a ball screen if we don't have anything. All right, and this is the same thing, right? So we're attacking this drop, deep drop. Now we're floater at the rim, right? So
Ended up
now,
the end of this clip. You're now on just like your arrow floating.
I'm sorry,
So
what?
we saw the end of that clip, but now I've just got a black screen with like your arrow just floating. So if you want to stop the share and reshare it, that would probably help.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Share screen. Okay. You see it now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna do this. I think I have 2 more and then I'm done. All right. So next one, we're going off a horn set here. Okay. We're looking to play on the other side with this for an empty side ball screen. Just a little weak side action on the opposite side. And right here, it's the same concept here, right? We want to attack this drop. He ends up rejecting it, and gets all the way to the rim. And generally, like, we knew that this big was going to be pretty lazy in his coverage. So that was something that we were preaching as well, is like, you're going to be able to get all the way to the rim on this. The next one here, this is just our last one. This is 21. Okay, so this is supposed to be 21. I'll go back. Yeah. All right, so this next one here, this is supposed to be 21 dribble. As you can see, they're backed off of our guard. So what it's supposed to be is it's supposed to go right into a ball screen, sort of like this hook ball screen, almost guard to guard.
Right.
And instead, now we're supposed to flare off of it, but he flares off of it here. We have the option to either flare and hit the flare or follow it back up with an empty side ball screen in that tight corner.
So I got a quick question.
So here,
because I'm curious about this.
Go ahead.
When you flare, where do you tell that man to exit to? Does he go to the point? Does he go like lane line extended on the other side so that he's in the slot? Like how much space are you giving that empty ball screen that's now on the open side?
So what we would do probably is we would say, you come off this flare, you don't get it, you're going to dive, you're going to fill back out,
Yeah, and then
and play in like almost either this short corner area or back out, and we're respacing the floor.
Okay.
On the perimeter.
Love it.
But I think realistically on this tight ball screen, you're probably telling them like opposite elbow, or maybe even just a step in from the opposite elbow, if that makes sense.
Right.
I think that'd be pretty good spacing in general, for that tight one.
Perfect.
But so here we're coming off of this flare, and now we're following it back up with the middle ball screen. And this is one of our first plays of the game. And I wish we would have been able to attack this a little bit more. Even though they made their adjustment in the first half, I felt at halftime. In the second half, I felt like we could have been able to get a little bit more in the first half off of this, where we were just picking and popping right off of it. Off the deep drop, middle ball screen, really easy pick and pop. If they stunt, we're cutting it. Just real simple, basic stuff.
Right.
But when you're dropped that far, you're really almost making it impossible to guard. It's more or less pick your poison.
Right.
Uh, So, that was, just some of our actions that we utilized earlier in the season. Later in the season, we went to more of like spread ball screen stuff, more of like a ball screen base. So a lot of the different like the through actions and different actions like that we didn't utilize nearly as much. But overall, I'd say like the biggest thing from this game was, we let the team back in the game from our press and then our negative on
Right.
the press
Right.
and our bad shots.
So let me first start by saying, as usual, sir, you continue to be above and beyond, and I really appreciate you sharing and coming out and doing this. Is exactly why I wanted to speak with you. Every presentation I've been in with you, like, always impress, and you're super transparent. And I would encourage anybody who listens, reach out, man. Connor's great. He really is. He's willing to share, works his butt off. Up next, in my opinion, type deal. Wish you continued success. I know your season at the new school is starting up this week, so obviously continued success with that. And then I'll wind the show down a little bit in terms of saying, like, first off, like, thanks for preparing that, man. You're the first guest to come on and prepare clips for themselves, and I didn't ask you to do that, and I welcome that. Obviously, that's awesome. Thank you. But I'll wind the show down in just terms of saying, like, as always, happy new year. And this has been such a blessing being able to get on and speak with coaches such as yourself, who are willing to share the game, who are continuous learners, who are striving to get better, and want to learn from each other, want to shoot the breeze about it, because I've got the time and I've got the desire. So happy to spend time with guys such as yourself. And in addition, obviously, please tune in next week. I've got Mike the Cracker joining us. Mike's in Belgium, right? Is that right? I feel
I
like that's
believe
right.
so.
Anyways, yeah, U19 and U21 from Belgium at the academy out there. He's going to share one of his games with us, which is awesome, because I really like being able to sit in with clinicians that and see them coach, and like hear what they're doing in games and how they make adjustments, all that kind of stuff. So it's fantastic to be able to sit in with people who are willing to share the game. Also, I like to give a shout out to Rising Coaches every week. Huge shout out to Rising Coaches, connecting myself with other coaches who want to get better. And lastly, of course, all the coaches who are on this call, Cole, Noah, LB, B. Shake, Chris Bogert. Like, thank you, gentlemen. There were some other people who were on earlier that ended up getting off. I know this is one of the longer ones we've done, but that being said, like, I just appreciate, ladies and gentlemen such as yourself, who want to jump on, want to listen, ask questions, want to get better. This has been such an amazing experience. Happy to continue it each week, and I hope you guys are all getting something from it as well. And beyond that, I'll see you guys next week. Happy New Year to you. It's the first for us. This will come out on the 8th. And I think that's it. Thanks again, Connor. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, thank you. You're top notch, and I appreciate our friendship, our conversations, and I really enjoy the show as well. So if you're watching this, please watch it again.
Thank you, sir. Join in.